As for individuals involved, I will be pressing charges. A Dalton home that she leased to Mayor Tiffany Henyard has filed eviction papers. She says Henyard has not paid her. The city of Dalton is spiraling deeper into chaos amid mounting controversies, accusations of financial mismanagement, and relentless political infighting that have transformed township meetings into spectacles resembling reality TV drama. At the center of this turmoil is Tiffany Henyard, the self-proclaimed super mayor, whose leadership has become the subject of widespread scrutiny. Trustees, community members, and political observers alike are increasingly disillusioned with Henyard's tumultuous reign, marked by erratic decision-making and a theatrical approach to governance. Henyard serves simultaneously as the mayor of Dalton and the supervisor of Fawn Township, which has made her a polarizing figure. Critics argue that her leadership style fosters division and dysfunction, with many alleging that her administration prioritizes image over substance rather than focusing on the community's pressing needs. Henyard has been accused of obsessing over creating a public persona. Among the most glaring issues facing Dalton are mounting economic deficits, persistent allegations of personal financial mismanagement, and an organizational breakdown that has hindered meaningful governance. Her detractors point to extravagant spending, including allegations that taxpayer dollars were used for luxury accommodations, fine dining, and even cosmetic services, as evidence of her self-serving tendencies. These reports have sparked outrage, especially when juxtaposed with Dalton's dire fiscal situation, where the average median income is far below the national average. Even in the face of these controversies, Henyard has remained defiant. She has refused to step aside or alter her strategy, instead casting herself as a fearless leader standing firm against powerful political adversaries bent on dismantling her administration. This narrative has found traction among her shrinking base of supporters, who view her as a resilient figure battling entrenched political forces conspiring to oust her. However, for many critics, this portrayal rings hollow. They argue that Henyard's behavior is less about resilience and more about reckless defiance, further alienating the very community she claims to serve. At township meetings, tensions have reached unprecedented levels, with trustees openly clashing with Henyard in increasingly combative exchanges. These meetings, which often devolve into shouting matches, have become emblematic of the dysfunction that defines Henyard's leadership. Critics liken her approach to that of a reality TV star, combative, performative, and focused more on creating spectacle than solving problems. Henyard has been accused of condescension and belligerence toward trustees and constituents alike, often wielding her golden microphone, a symbol of her penchant for theatricality, with an air of bravado that underscores her detachment from the struggles of the community. Trustees have been outspoken in their criticisms, with one even likening her leadership style to that of a bully, fostering an atmosphere where open discourse and collaborative governance have become increasingly difficult. Beyond her contentious demeanor, Henyard's administration has faced serious legal and ethical questions, including allegations of misusing public resources. Reports suggest that she directed township funds toward questionable expenditures and used official resources, such as township vehicles, for personal or politically motivated purposes. Notably, there are accusations that Henyard used township vehicles to transport supporters to events, a plan that backfired when mismanagement led to supporters being left stranded. These instances of disorganization and alleged misconduct have only reinforced doubts about her leadership abilities, adding fuel to the fire of public discontent. Henyard's leadership has also been marred by personal financial troubles. Recently, a landlord filed an eviction lawsuit against her, alleging that she failed to pay rent for months and illegally changed the locks to prevent access to the property. This lawsuit mirrors the broader allegations of financial mismanagement and irresponsibility that have dogged her administration. Despite these mounting scandals, Henyard remains undeterred in her pursuit of political power. Rather than addressing the controversies, Henyard has intensified efforts to solidify her position, including announcing her intention to seek re-election as mayor. Her campaign emphasizes themes of perseverance and empowerment, urging her supporters to rally behind her in the face of what she portrays as a coordinated effort to undermine her leadership. However, Henyard's re-election bid is clouded by one of her most glaring controversies, yet the highly publicized skating rink project, which cost millions of dollars and has been widely criticized as a vanity project aimed more at boosting her public profile than addressing the community's pressing needs. The project stands in stark contrast to rumors that Henyard is facing eviction from her residence and defending allegations of hosting lavish, poorly attended events funded by taxpayer money. In addition, Henyard has been accused of misusing government credit cards, including spending exorbitant amounts on luxury furniture, costly travel, and other questionable purchases. In one particularly egregious instance, an investigation revealed that Henyard spent $40,000 in a single day on an online shopping spree, a revelation that only intensified scrutiny of her financial practices. Henyard's tenure has been marked by public meetings that have devolved into chaotic spectacles. These meetings often highlight her inability to unify the board, with trustees openly clashing with her leadership style. One notable incident saw a trustee storm out in frustration, accusing Henyard of steering Doton toward financial ruin. This claim is not without merit. Under her leadership, the township's general fund has reportedly plummeted from over $1 million to a staggering deficit. The financial mismanagement has reached such an alarming state that federal investigators have begun probing allegations of embezzlement and corruption, further deepening the sense of crisis surrounding her administration. In response to the town's fiscal troubles, Henyard has proposed an audacious plan to return property taxes to residents, a move widely derided as a reckless and impractical vote-buying scheme that fails to address the broader financial woes of the township. Her penchant for dubious expenditures and alleged financial abuse extends beyond the skating rink project, with reports of extravagant parties and an over-reliance on personal security funded by public money, further eroding trust in her leadership. At recent town meetings, residents have voiced their dissatisfaction by turning their backs on Henyard as she spoke, a symbolic gesture of frustration that underscores the boiling point of public discontent. Despite the growing chorus of criticism, Henyard remains steadfast, framing herself as the victim of a political conspiracy intent on ousting her from power. She has compared her struggles to those of other polarizing figures in history, invoking a narrative of resilience in the face of adversity. However, her increasingly erratic behavior and failure to address substantive issues have only deepened the divide between her and the community. Promises made during her tenure, including ambitious development projects and community initiatives, have largely fallen flat, leaving residents disillusioned with a pattern of broken commitments. Meanwhile, Henyard public appearances often underscore her disconnect from the realities facing Dalton's residents. Critics argue that she is more focused on self-preservation than on tackling the mounting crisis under her watch. The ongoing federal investigation into allegations of embezzlement and corruption has added a new layer of complexity to Henyard's already embattled leadership. The financial collapse of Thorn Township under her watch has only fueled these accusations, as residents and trustees alike question how funds intended for public services have been squandered. The skating rink project, once touted as a community centerpiece, now stands as a symbol of misplaced priorities and fiscal irresponsibility. Despite the mounting scandals and growing public dissatisfaction, Henyard shows no signs of stepping down. She continues to assert her innocence, claiming that the accusations against her are baseless and politically motivated. This defiance has done little to step the tide of criticism, as even her most ardent supporters struggle to reconcile her rhetoric with the reality of her actions. The discontent has become so palpable that even those who once championed her leadership are beginning to distance themselves, leaving Henyard increasingly isolated. In her defense, as Dalton grapples with the fallout from Henyard's controversial tenure, the question remains: how long can her reign of controversy last, with public dissatisfaction at an all-time high and investigations into her conduct ongoing? The future of Henyard's leadership hangs in the balance. For a town already struggling with economic challenges and a fractured political landscape, her administration has become a lightning rod for frustration and disappointment. Tiffany Henyard appears to have lost control of he entered the room expecting a routine municipal supervisor meeting in Thornton Township, a predictable event focused on local issues, updates on community, and the usual bureaucratic back and forth. Instead, he was met with a scene that could only be described as a live-action catastrophe, more fitting for a reality show than a township meeting. The focal point of the chaos was Tiffany Henyard, the embattled township supervisor. What was meant to be a standard meeting spiraled into an uncontrollable debacle, leaving attendees bewildered. Trustees visibly exasperated, lambasted Henyard for bulldozing decisions through without adhering to established procedures, accusing her of fostering an environment of dysfunction and recklessness. Tempers flared, voices were raised, and accusations filled the air, creating a surreal spectacle. This meeting encapsulated the growing controversies and legal troubles that have marked Henyard's leadership. Legal disputes over unpaid rent and allegations of misusing public funds hovered over the event, fueling the tense atmosphere. Despite the barrage of criticism from trustees and residents alike, Henyard remained undeterred, clinging stubbornly to her authority. Her unilateral decisions often made without consensus, only deepened public frustration, leading many to accuse her of dictatorial behavior. The meeting unfolded like a dramatic display where the audience alternated between outrage and helpless fascination, trapped in the spectacle of a government in disarray. Henyard tenure has been marked by scandal after scandal, tarnishing her reputation and jeopardizing the future of the township. Allegations of lavish spending, including using public funds for extravagant events and personal indulgences, have painted a grim picture of her leadership. Critics point to a pattern of financial irresponsibility where township resources are drained to fund grandiose but impractical initiatives, worsening an already precarious financial situation. One of her most contentious proposals, a plan to refund property taxes, has drawn widespread condemnation, while Henyard presents it as a goodwill gesture to the community. Critics argue it's a thinly veiled ploy to regain public favor. Experts warn that the plan is financially untenable and could push the township deeper into despair. As the med dragged on, frustration shifted into despair. Attendees who had come seeking accountability began questioning how Thornton Township, once a model of community strength, had fallen into such disarray. The tone of the meeting shifted between anger and disbelief as residents expressed dissatisfaction with Henyard's inability to provide clear answers or offer solutions to pressing issues. Accusations of cronyism and governance by fiat added weight to the criticisms of her leadership. Trustees and community leaders voiced increasing concern over her apparent prioritization of personal gain over public welfare, with one trustee publicly condemning her approach as reckless and authoritarian. The chaotic nature of the meeting highlighted deeper systemic issues that have plagued Henyard's leadership for years, from questionable expenditures on public credit cards to her controversial refusal to pay rent. Allegations of misconduct have followed her at every turn. One particularly egregious example of financial mismanagement involved tens of thousands of dollars spent on luxury goods and events, funds that critics argue should have been directed toward pressing community needs. These incidents have become symbols of a broader narrative of neglect and self-interest that has defined her time in office. The growing mistrust between Henyard and the community was palpable in the room. Many residents openly questioned how someone with such a contentious track record could still hold so much power. Calls for accountability echoed through the chamber, with some attendees demanding an immediate shift in leadership. Henyard's attempts to deflect criticism, dismissed her detractors as politically motivated, and cast herself as a victim of targeted persecution seemed to fall on deaf ears. Her consistent refusal to acknowledge mistakes or offer meaningful changes only further alienated those seeking clarity and reassurance. Critics argue that Henyard's leadership represents not just a failure of governance, but also a broader failure of transparency and integrity in public office. It was going to be a little messy, but it's just something we felt important that had to be done, that should be done. So tensions were high as the meeting began, with clear divisions among the trustees, setting the stage for yet another contentious dispute under Supervisor Tiffany Henyard. Leadership allegations of embezzling public funds and using her position for personal gain loomed over the proceedings, further eroding trust in her leadership. The sense of growing discontent was palpable, hanging heavily in the air. At the center of the meeting's chaos was Trustee Caro, who attempted to participate remotely by phone, a practice that had previously been customary. However, Henyard swiftly denied Coo's request, making a decisive display of authority. Her rejection came with a pointed remark: "If you haven't been here, you should have come to the board meeting to handle the business." With those words, Henyard not only dismissed the trust, but also set the tone for the entire meeting. The message was clear: cooperation and compromise were not welcome. Rather than focusing on resolving pressing issues facing the township, the meeting quickly became a platform for Henyard autocratic leadership. Her actions reinforced the criticisms that have long followed her, prioritizing power consolidation and silencing dissent over fostering an inclusive and productive dialogue. The meeting became a showcase of her controlling style, where constructive critique and meaningful discussion were all but eliminated. Pero, who had hoped to engage in the decision-making process, was effectively sidelined, illustrating the broader issue of Henyard's refusal to entertain diverse perspectives or engage in good faith dialogue, a recurring critique of her leadership. The fallout from Henyard's approach was immediate and evident. Trustees exchanged tense remarks, their frustration laid bare for all to see. Attendees, some angered by her high-handed behavior and others resigned to yet another display of dysfunction, watched as the meeting devolved into chaos. This incident epitomized the instability and conflict that have come to define Henyard administration. Critics pointed to it as just another example of Henyard putting her ego and personal agenda ahead of the needs of the township. Over time, this pattern has become increasingly evident. Henyard has been accused of governing with a lens of pettiness and contempt for dissenting voices, alienating not only her critics but also former allies who once supported her leadership. Her refusal to consider alternative viewpoints has driven her already fragile administration further into discord. Her insistence on dominating conversations rather than engaging in transparent, inclusive governance has reinforced perceptions that her leadership is not only divisive but also ineffective. The consequence of Hen's actions were clear during the meeting, but West had that reading. Some members, globally trustees, openly expressed frustration with her refusal to collaborate, while residents watching from the sidelines voiced their dissatisfaction. Their concerns were not solely about Henyard's leadership style, but about the tangible impact of her decisions on the community. Issues such as allegations of financial misconduct and governance failures had left many questioning her ability to lead the township toward stability and progress. Henyard's tendency to dismiss criticism and double down on her authority has only deepened the fractures within her administration, pushing the township further into a state of instability rather than addressing the pressing challenges facing the community, such as economic struggles, infrastructure needs, and restoring transparency. Henyard appeared more focused on demonstrating her control and silencing opposition. For many, this meeting exemplified the broader failures of Henyard's tenure. Her administration has been marred by scandal, allegations of public fund misuse, and an apparent disregard for ethical leadership. Meanwhile, the township faces critical challenges that demand cohesive, forward-thinking governance, something Henyard has failed to provide. Her approach has perpetuated a cycle of instability, alienating those around her and undermining the public's faith in local government. By the end of the meeting, the atmosphere was one of exhaustion and frustration. Trustees, residents, and even onlookers were left questioning how much longer the township could endure under Henyard's leadership. At the Doton Village Board meeting this evening, that meeting was being held at the Park District building. Since Village Hall cannot legally accommodate the crowd, you would think local leaders would put aside their differences and work together for the community's benefit. But that was not the case at the recent meeting. Tiffany Henyard is in charge, and despite the importance of the tax refund proposal, the meeting quickly spiraled out of control. Among the items on the agenda were approving the minutes from the previous meeting and discussing a proposed tax refund for Dalton residents. This refund, worth over $2 million, should have been a straightforward matter, but when trustee Chris Gonzalez left the meeting, there was no quorum, no vote, and no tax refund. Gonzalez had clearly had enough of Henyard's antics. Naturally, Henyard tried to shift the blame, accusing Gonzalez and the other trustees of being unwilling to fulfill their duties. However, let's face it, under Henyard's leadership, it's clear that no one can effectively operate. The so-called super mayor is also facing eviction from her home after reportedly not paying rent for several months. Her landlord, Janetta Hall, who once considered Henyard a friend, is now seeking legal action to evict Henyard and her boyfriend, Kamal Woods, who also works for the township. Hall claims Henyard owes over $500,000 in back rent and is now going through the legal process to remove them from the property. It seems even with a combined income of over $300,000, Henyard and Woods can't manage to pay the rent. This situation is just part of a broader investigation with the FBI looking into how taxpayer money has been spent. Among the issues under scrutiny is Henyard's use of a police security detail, which reportedly cost thousands of dollars and diverted officers from their regular duties. As if that weren't enough, Henyard has also been using her position to silence political opponents. In a recent Facebook Live rant, she vaguely accused unnamed individuals of engaging in power and money grabs, promising they would pay the price. This is a tactic often used by those who believe they are untouchable. But how long can Henyard keep this up? In the end, it's the people of Dalton who suffer the most. The township is over $5 million in debt, and critical services are being cut for over a year. We've been reporting on Henyard's questionable spending, but now it's clear there is much more to the story. Will Henyard be able to hold on to her position of power, or will the residents of Dalton finally decide they've had enough? With the ongoing federal investigation, will Henyard face real consequences, or will she continue to evade responsibility? Despite Henyard's portrayal of herself as the super mayor, the power truly lies with the people of Dalton, and they must decide the future of their town. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching Punchline Pro, guys.